In this lecture, we're going to continue looking at the accessory structures of the integumentary system, and we're going to be looking at glands. Several kinds of exocrine glands are associated with the skin. We have sebaceous or oil glands. We have sudoriferous glands, and these are sweat glands. Sudoriferous glands are sweat glands, and there are two kinds of those. We have eccrine sweat glands and apocrine sweat glands. And then there are also ceruminous glands. Mammary glands, these are a specialized type of sudoriferous glands that secrete milk. So a special type are going to be mammary glands. Mammary glands. They are a special type of sudoriferous glands. So the secreting portion of the sebaceous glands, we'll talk about those first. The secreting portion lies within the dermis and usually opens into the neck of a hair follicle. So it's going to be this gland right here. So it opens into the neck of the hair follicle right there. There are a couple places where the sebaceous glands open directly to the surface of the skin. Those are going to be the lips, the glans penis, the labia minora, and also the tarsal glands of the eyelids. So these are going to be areas where you have sebaceous glands that open directly to the surface of the skin. Sebaceous glands are types of glands that are absent in the palms and soles, and they're really present in small quantities in most areas of the trunk and the limbs. So we're going to have small quantities in the trunk and the limbs. But they're going to be available, or they're going to be present in large quantities in the skin of the breasts, face, neck, and superior chest. So breast, face, neck, and superior chest. Okay, so that is going to be sebaceous glands. Next, we're going to talk about sudoriferous glands. Quickly erase this. So sudor, the prefix sudor actually means sweat. So we know that sudoriferous glands are meaning sweat glands. So I'm going to talk about these two here. Sudor means sweat. And these are glands that are present in very high quantities. So there's about 3 to 4 million in the body, and they release sweat naturally or perspiration. Perspiration is another word for sweat. And this is secreted onto hair follicles or to the skin surface through pores, and they are divided into two different types. We have eccrine sweat glands and apocrine sweat glands, and these characterizations are based upon their structure and their type of secretion. So eccrine sweat glands, these are the most numerous, and they are simple coiled tubular glands. So simple coiled tubular. So those are going to be eccrine glands. And these are going to be types of glands that are going to be distributed on most areas of the skin, except for the lips, nail beds, toes, eardrums, and genitals. So most everywhere else though. The secretory portion in eccrine glands is located deep to the dermis, and the excretory product projects through the dermis and the epidermis, and it ends at a pore on the surface, just like this gland right here. So you have a simple tubular gland, and it exits at a pore on the surface. Sweat glands, they produce a secretion that mainly consists of water. So sweat glands are going to be mostly water with small amounts of ions, urea, uric acid, ammonia, amino acids, glucose, and lactic acid. So those are going to be in small amounts though. The main function of eccrine sweat is to help regulate body temperature. And this is done through evaporation. So it's going to be regulating body temperature through evaporation. So as sweat evaporates, large quantities of heat energy also leave the surface. And this homeostatic regulation of body temperature is known as thermoregulation. So that's a very important part of homeostasis in the body. So those are all going to be eccrine sweat glands. And because the sweat is mainly made of water, that's going to help with that thermal regulation. Okay, next we have apocrine sweat glands. And apocrine sweat glands are mainly found in the skin of the axilla. And the axilla as you should remember, is the armpit. It's also found in the groin and the areolae. And that's the pigmented areas around the nipples. So that's just the pigmented area around the nipples is called the areolae. And apocrine glands are also found in bearded regions in adult males as well. The secretion in these glands is completed by exocytosis. And this is very characteristic also of eccrine glands. And this was named because of the type of secretion that it does. Anyways, apocrine sweat contains the same components as eccrine sweat, plus there are a lot more lipids and a lot more proteins in the apocrine secretion. But still, it's also mostly water as well. Sweat that is secreted from apocrine sweat glands is odorless. However, when it interacts with bacteria on the surface of the skin, the bacteria metabolizes its components, and that causes the apocrine sweat to have a musky odor that is often referred to as body odor. So body odor is actually bacteria digesting the apocrine sweat. So we're going to have BO is, well, we could say it's bacteria metabolites. So it's kind of like the bacteria eats the apocrine sweat, and then the byproducts are smelly. Okay, now the final type of gland that we're going to talk about is the ceruminous gland, and this comes from the word cerumen, Okay, so ceruminous sweat glands. These are modified sweat glands that are located in the external ear, and they produce this waxy lubricating secretion. So this waxy lubricating secretion. This secretion combined with the sebaceous glands in the same area, these combine to produce this yellowish material that is called cerumen. And cerumen is more commonly known as earwax. So cerumen actually waterproofs the ear canal, and it also prevents bacteria and fungi from entering the cells. So it's quite important in the ear. So waterproofs and protection. Protection from bacteria and fungi. Okay, so there's a couple different types of perspiration that we're going to talk about. You have insensible perspiration, and this is sweat that actually evaporates from the skin before we perceive it as sweat. And then we have sensible perspiration. This is sweat that's excreted in much larger amounts. It's seen as moisture in the skin, and we can actually detect it as sweat. During thermoregulatory sweating, remember we have sweating that helps with the thermal regulation or the regulation of body temperature. So this would be called thermoregulatory sweating. So during thermoregulatory sweating, sweat first forms on the forehead and the scalp, and then it extends to the rest of the body, forming last on the palms and the soles. So we're going to be starting from your head, start there, and then we go all the way down. So that's how kind of the process of thermoregulatory sweating occurs. If we remember this from last week, we can look at what each type of gland looks like. It consists of a secretory portion where you have these secretory cells, and then the duct where the secretion actually comes out. So sebaceous or oil glands are going to be simple branched acinar glands, which are connected to hair follicles. Remember that these ones are going to be connected to hair follicles. The secreting portion lies in the dermis and usually opens to the neck of the hair follicle. And remember, there are a couple places where sebaceous glands open directly to the surface of the skin. These are going to be the lips, glans penis, labia minora, and the tarsal glands of the eyelids. Eccrine glands, these ones are going to be simple, coiled, tubular glands. And they are distributed on most areas of the skin, remember, except for the lips, nail beds, toes, eardrums, and genitals. And remember again, the secretory portion is located mainly in the deep dermis, and the excretory product is projected through the dermis and ends at a port on the surface. Apocrine glands, they are also the simple coiled tubular glands, but they do have larger ducts and lumens than eccrine glands. Remember, a lumen is the central cavity of a tube. So the central cavity of a tube, so you're going to have this portion in here is going to be the lumen. Okay, lastly, we have ceruminous glands, and these are modified sweat glands in the external ear. Remember, they produce a waxy lubricating secretion. And combining the secretion of their ceruminous glands and sebaceous glands, we have cerumen that's produced. And it provides this sticky barrier in your ear that stops the entrance of foreign bodies like bacteria and fungi, and it also stops insects as well often, and it waterproofs your ear canal as well. Okay, and that will be the end of Chapter 5, Part 6.